Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during World War II, once remarked, "Many forms of government have been tried and will be tried in this world of sin and woe. No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all-wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time." And I have at times great sympathy for the notion that democracy is the worst. And it's usually when I listen to Parliament's question period, which seems to consist of the loudest yelling and outrage competition. Democracy at its simplest is intended to allow each person equal say in selecting the government. One person, one vote. And of course, it's much more complicated in practice, but that's the essential idea, that the people of a community or a country decide for themselves who takes on leadership. As Unitarian Universalists, we practice this. The congregation selects and votes for the minister, and this is congregational polity. And it's reflected in our fifth principle, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Our religious tradition identifies democracy as the best, worst way to run our community and the countries we live in. Like many of you, I am glad that the US election has been called, and I spent much of last week nervously refreshing my Twitter feed and watching the news coverage. And for me personally, it feels good, joyful to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win. Woohoo! It's wonderful to see that the first woman of color, is poised to be vice president. The people voted and the votes were counted. Democracy works. Sort of, mostly. The United States, it's revealed, is such a polarized place with millions and millions of people voting to stay on the path they were on. And that divide between people is deep. It's a gaping Grand Canyon kind of chasm, and there isn't any apparent bridge across. As Terry Tempest Williams says, how do we engage in conversation at a time when the definition of what it means to be a patriot is being narrowly construed? You are either with us or against us. Discussion is waged in absolutes, not ambiguities. Fear has replaced discussion. Williams wrote those words in 2004. They were correct then, and that US chasm has been growing larger ever since. Fear has replaced discussion, and hate has replaced compassion. And my hope is that with the election, that will begin to change. At the same time, I worry because I see that chasm beginning to be dug here. There's hateful rhetoric, there's fear baiting, there's falsehoods peddled as truth. It's all showing up in small ways here in Canada as well. But we've got time to prevent that chasm from widening, to build bridges across it while we can still see the other side. And this morning, I'm going to talk quite a bit about what Terry Tempest has to say about this, because Williams comes from a conservative Republican Mormon family in Utah, but she herself is a feminist, an environmentalist, and a Democrat. And her life is a testament to how to live with difference, of how to live with that pain of division, and it's real division, while also loving across that divide. And I found her words giving me hope. And she really talks about democracy as an act of faith. Williams says, a spiritual democracy is inspired by our own sense of what we can accomplish together, honoring an integrated society where the social, intellectual, physical, and economic well-being of all is considered, not just the wealth and health of a corporate few. And despite our principle lifting up the democratic process, I have really never considered democracy to be spiritual. But I think Williams is onto something. Democracy is a political system. It's created by people, and it reflects the values and meanings of the society that shapes it. And my sense is that Williams' understanding of spiritual democracy is the democracy that we as Unitarian Universalists are seeking. Williams talks about democracy as being an open space, like the bowl of a chalice, open to all who are present. She writes, "In the open space of democracy, there is room for dissent. In the open space of democracy, there is room for differences. In the open space of democracy, the health of the environment is seen as the wealth of our communities." There's room for dissent, there's room for difference, but the common ground is the land, the place on which we all live. William goes on to say that in a spiritual democracy, cooperation is valued more than competition, and prosperity becomes the caretaker of poverty. She notes that the humanities should matter because it's the art of what it means to be human, that beauty is essential, and technology is based in a reverence for life. And I think this is chalice democracy. It's the democracy we want to practice, imperfectly and often failing, but trying. We, as UUs, seek cooperation. We value art and worship and beauty. Our principles are rooted in reverence for life. It's not the political democracy we actually live in, but it is the one we seek. It's the one we can work towards. Williams reminds us that democracy is also messy and chaotic, and it requires patience and persistence. And if any of you have been involved in church leadership, you know that's true. Sometimes we get excited and move too fast, and that's when cracks appear, gaps widen, because not enough people are engaged and on board. So we have to go back and talk some more and understand each other better and start again. Sometimes we begin from different values. We're already standing on opposite sides of a division. And then it takes time to build that bridge across, not to erase difference, but to work from it and use it as a strength. For Williams, democracy is power shared and maintained by many. Power is shared and maintained by many. It's not about personal independence, but life in association, in connection. And that's not quick or easy, because it takes time to develop relationships, to build networks, to hear all the voices, take needs into consideration, can be excruciatingly slow. And that's creation. Creation always takes longer than destruction. But bridges that last are built with care and intention and are anchored in strong foundations. And it's especially difficult when there has been such polarization, divisions into us and them, and dehumanizing rhetoric. It goes back and becomes that Grand Canyon chasm where you can't even see the people on the other side. But I think we have to have faith. That's part of our spirituality, is to have hope and intention that chasms can be narrowed, bridges can be built, that it's always possible. It takes hard work, it involves failure, and takes longer than ever imagined, but it's possible. And it begins with each of us and the state of our hearts. Tempest Williams says, "The human heart is the first home of democracy. It is where we embrace our questions. Can we be equitable? Can we be generous? Can we listen with our whole beings and not just our minds? Offer our attention rather than our opinions? And do we have enough resolve in our hearts to act courageously, relentlessly, without giving up ever, trusting our fellow citizens to join with us in our determined pursuit of a living democracy?" The human heart is the first home of democracy. Democracy is people choosing generosity, people listening to each other fully, wholly, acting with courage. And it's a challenge. Many of you struggle with how to engage with relatives, neighbors, and colleagues who express views that are prejudicial and harmful. And I know that I'm reluctant to engage with my conservative relatives. We too easily end up arguing. It's a practice. We have to learn how to figure it out, how to talk in this way. And it's important to note that there are extremists who are frightening in their extreme views, who will not and aren't capable of engaging in respectful dialogue, and we shouldn't try. But as Kathy pointed out, we mostly want the same things: more money coming in than money going out, some friends to hang out with, love and meaning in our lives. There is common ground. And we can build that bridge if we stop seeing the other side as crazy or impossible to understand or evil. If we talk not to change someone's mind or to show how right we are, but to know one another, to hear someone else's hopes and fears and share our own, to understand what it is underneath their choices to believe what they believe and find that space of connection, to find the way to us by offering attention, not opinions. Last night on the news, there was a young woman, and she was standing between Biden and Trump supporters on the street, and they had been yelling at each other. And this woman begins to speak, and she asks the two groups to stand together, to talk to each other, to understand that all of them together were America. And she is a bridge builder. She's understanding that we are all us, that we're all in this together, and there is no other, as much as we sometimes create those divisions ourselves. There is no other. And when the canyon is as deep as it is, those first bridge builders going out build just a little bit at a time, one foundation stone and then another, a few human connections across difference, slow and careful breaking down of stereotypes, refuting hate. Williams reminds us the heart is the house of empathy, whose door opens when we receive the pain of others. And this is where bravery lives, where we find our mettle to give and receive, to love and be loved, to stand in the center of uncertainty with strength, not fear, understanding this is all there is. There is power in empathy, in feeling and caring for others. When we keep our hearts open, we can stand in uncertainty with strength. We have the power to help prevent a deep chasm growing here in Canada. That power lies in keeping our hearts open to others, listening fully, offering attention and not opinions. It lies in, in wanting all to be included and working towards that goal, seeking a spiritual democracy based on the worth of all people, knowing our interdependence. And it comes from staying rooted in our UU faith. May the joy and hope of these days evolve into action, into more care for more people, into bridges built with solid foundations. The human heart is the first home of democracy. So say we all.